Suitcase listeners, this is Cyndi Chen, and I am your host for the rest of your life, My Childhood Suitcase. Tonight, or actually, let's just say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on the time that you're listening. Today's episode, I have another guest who actually has her own suitcase to unpack, and she is a wonderful director and actress, and now a coach, an acting coach, I think. Yes, acting coach. And she's also a fellow podcaster called The Creative Connection. Please welcome a very good friend of mine, Cyndi Thomsen. Now, mind you, it's Thomsen or O-N? En. Cyndi, thank you for joining me on this wonderful podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me, Cyndi.
Of course.
Yes, I am all those things that you mentioned. I like to call myself a coach, storyteller, and helper of people who are on a path, whether they're artists and they claim to be artists or dream that they were artists of some sort.
Okay.
Visionaries and leaders who find themselves struggling to find their voice, find their purpose, and align their life so that they can create the life that they are most passionate about living, which is the name of my business, creating a passionate life. And I created the Creative Connection podcast because there's three things I know about people. People want connection. We are all creative, whether we own it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be community and a sense of belonging. If we don't have that, then we don't have a lot of purpose in our life.
Oh, lady after my own heart, because I too have spent some time, about a couple of years, just last year, to realign with my life goals. Well, one of them, the primariest one, is becoming an actress and getting serious about it. But I'm more interested in your story. So can you please unpack for the listeners here?
Yeah. So, where to start? I am going to be celebrating my 65th birthday in a little under 2 months.
Yay! Happy birthday!
And thank you. And I discovered my voice in this world when I was told no.
Oh?
So I was a very shy kid, and a lot of the relationships and friendships that I created, my mother lit a fire, sparked them. She would introduce me to families, and then she'd kind of wander away and let me find my space with the various different people that I interacted with. But one of the times that we had moved to a new community, and I had what I thought was a core set of friends, a couple of neighbors and a couple of others. It was going into 5th grade. And if you remember going into 5th grade, that's about the time that you could join band or you could sing in the choir. And back in the day, so in the 70s, when I was growing up, you had to try out or audition for those things.
Oh my goodness.
And so I auditioned for choir and I auditioned for band. And then I had to sit and wait while the band teacher went and talked to the choir teacher. And my assumption was they were trying to figure out where I'd fit. But instead, the band teacher came back and said, "I'm sorry, we have no place for you.
What?
You're tone deaf."
What a terrible thing to say to a kid.
Yes, exactly.
A fucking 10-year-old at that.
Yep. So my mother, who was a teacher herself, first of all, took that and went, okay, first of all, you shouldn't have been told that. And second of all, you can learn if you truly are tone deaf, we can teach you music. So she went seeking someone to teach me how to play the piano, and eventually this person became my voice teacher. But I considered my piano teacher, Mrs. Mord, my first coach in life, my first life coach. She was truly a Sherpa on my journey. So I had her in my life from age 10 to age 18 and a half. So for 8 years, I worked with this woman. And when I entered 9th grade, there was a piano contest. Well, there was a music contest. I had to play a 3-part piano piece memorized for a group of judges. And then there was a hearing test where I would have to guess the intervals and the notes, and was evaluated on how well I did that. So I participated in this contest in the fall of my freshman year in high school. And we didn't get the results until January. And in January, when I showed up at my piano teacher's house for a lesson, she said, well, the letter came. Should we see how you did? And of course, my brain was thinking, okay, am I still tone deaf? How did I do? Now, I should have known that my piano teacher wouldn't set me up for something where I would fail, right?
No, of course not.
Exactly. Well, I was in the top 20 of the people that participated in this contest, and was privileged to take part in a 20 piano duet as a result of it. And lo and behold, it was proof that I was not tone deaf. And my mother's theory that you could learn.
Duh.
That lesson I have used multiple times in my life. Every time I'm told no, how can I learn this? And I use that work now in the work that I do. No, I think is a huge obstacle and will shut people down no matter where the no is coming from. A lot of times we create a bigger wall when we're told no. And so I use that in the work that I do. And in fact, that story and several others will be in my memoir that will be coming out later this year.
Ooh, please keep me posted. Will it be on Amazon?
It will be on Amazon.
Yay.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Everybody's writing a memoir these days, even celebrities, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes it's looking at their life, reflecting. Sometimes it's the tea from the behind the scenes tea, that is.
Yeah. So this actually is an interesting way that this one came to be, because there was another teacher I had actually when I was a freshman in high school, and I had to write that very first creative writing paper.
Oh.
And I chose to write about a favored pet who I just had to put to sleep.
Oh.
And that teacher gave me an F.
F?
And told me I wasn't a writer. Yes, and told me I wasn't a writer.
What the fuck?
That stuck with me for a long time in my life, too. And about 6 years ago, I met a gentleman and his wife who are mentors of mine in multiple different ways. But Dada Groover was my writing mentor, and I spent 1 year writing my memoir. And what came up when I started to write it was there was a week that I went on vacation in New York City with my husband. And while we were in New York City, I started to experience some physical pain that I had no idea why. It was in my hips, and it made it almost impossible for me to walk.
Oh, my.
And as I was experiencing that, I began to have flashbacks of all these times in my life that I had had something pop up that became an obstacle for me.
Ooh.
And what I discovered in the writing of this book that takes place during that week that I'm in New York, I had not processed any of the things that had happened to me in my life. And I like to say that our body remembers the things that we don't deal with.
Mm-hmm.
And that pain that I experienced was my body telling me that it was time that I had to deal with something.
Mm-hmm.
So
You took the words right out of my mouth, that you may not remember in your mind, but your body remembers exactly what you went through.
exactly.
And I've always believed that what you have not processed manifests physically, be it a cold, a sprained ankle, or as you said, pain in your body.
Pain in your body, or what ends up happening too is that it builds up, it builds up, it builds up, and it comes out.
Or cancer, worse, cancer.
Yeah, yes, or seriously, a bad attitude too. So you can be going along and faking it till you make it with a smile on your face, and then all of a sudden one day that smile is gone, and you become almost a different person to some of the people around you. Well, that is a manifestation that you have not dealt with something. And it's interesting, on my podcast today, I was sharing that if there's something that you want to create or manifest, all the vision boards in the world are not going to make that happen. It comes with energy. What energy are you putting out into the world? What is your attitude? What is your belief? And not owning that can put up another wall or another barrier for you that you don't even realize. And you know what? Sometimes it takes somebody who doesn't know you very well to say, hey, you know what I noticed when you talk about that is your facial expression changes, or your body thinks, or you get really bristly and big, and you know, what's that all about? Yeah.
That is so very interesting and insightful. I'm actually going through kind of a similar program right now that I had started last year, and it's definitely been a game changer for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's also changed my approach to acting. Instead of using acting as a way to hide my truer inner self, this time I'm sharing a part of myself into the characters I play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has been such an amazing game changer for me.
Yes. So back in the day when I took acting classes, there were different ways that you could go about acting. There still are, but one of the ways back in the day, it was called method acting. Now they've transformed that, and they've added some other, there's the emotional aspect of it. There's the physical aspect of it. There's the energy behind the movement that you're doing. There is perspective, all of these different ways. But when I coach actors, and I do a lot of coaching around monologues because that's our bread and butter as actors.
Of course.
If you don't have a good, filing cabinet to go to of monologues, you're not prepared when the possible, work comes up. So you have to have that in your suitcase, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's bread and butter, I like to tell all of the actors that I work with, you have to have somewhere between 10 and 20 monologues ready that you can pull out of a file and go, this works for this show, or this works for that show. But you have to know how you fit it in that monologue.
Explain, tell me more about that.
Sure. So I was working with a client last summer that had auditioned and auditioned and auditioned and auditioned, and they were in college and had not been cast in a show when they were a senior. And so they were looking for someone to help them with their monologues because that was not something their particular school worked on. They didn't do a lot of work on monologues and on auditioning in general. So we spent 6 weeks together working on the whole audition process. We talked about, what kinds of roles you think are a good fit for you. And we talked about why that was so important to them. And are they attached to the role, or are they attached to getting the job? Or attachment has a lot to do with it. There's energy around attachment.
Attached to the
and
outcome.
I said, yeah. And I said to them, I said, what kind of monologues do you do? And they could not answer the question.
Stumped.
So the challenge was they didn't have anything prepared that would show a certain part of who they were as an actor, that they could use that as a resource for auditioning. So I asked them questions about, okay, what are some dream roles that you have? What are some roles you don't ever want to have? Why don't you want to have those? So we went through, how you saw yourself as an actor. And we ended up then going into my filing cabinet brain of possible, pieces that they could do that would fit those different aspects. And then I asked them to go and search for some that would fit certain emotions or personalities or who they thought they were on stage, or, if you were going to be auditioning for, let's say, A Midsummer Night's Dream and you want to play a fairy, what would be a good choice to audition with? It's not from the play, that shows the depth of the person. And so we spent some time working on that. And at the end of our time together, this person now had 10 different types of monologues that they could pull from. And it just so happened they had a couple of shows coming up that they wanted to audition for as they were going into their senior year at school.
Yay.
And so we talked about what would be good choices for that audition. So we picked what those were, and then we freshened up the resume, all of those good things that we all have to do, right? And they went off and did their audition, and I got this excited phone call from them that they had been cast in both of the shows that they wanted to be in, and they had not experienced that in any of the times. And I asked them if they had asked the director after they had gotten the notice about being cast, what was different now versus a year ago. And the two directors, both of them said, I could see who you were. I couldn't see who you were before.
Really?
So it has a lot to do with the selection. It has a lot to do with how we practice. It has a lot to do with what we pour into what we're sharing, even if it's only for a minute or two.
Wow. That's very interesting. I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Well, your method is definitely working, whatever your technique is.
Yeah. What else would you like to know?
Let's go back to when you were to your schooling with acting. Is there any method of acting that you liked besides Stanislavski, Meisner, etc., etc.?
So I'm an intuitive actor.
Oh yeah, me too.
I'm also an intuitive director. Meaning, if I find myself, if I'm too boxed into an idea, I find that it doesn't work as much as if I just go with the flow and breathe. And I find that what I usually do as an actor is in that flow process, I'm looking at the character that I'm playing and how am I showing up, me, Cyndi, showing up in that role? Is there an aspect of me, or is it the shadow side of me? Is it something I've never been or am not, that now I'm looking at the other side of who I am? Because there's this wall we put up on the front. It's our mask that we wear out into the world. It's what we want the world to see.
Okay.
And we all have something behind the mask that I call our shadow side. It's the things that we struggle with. We don't really expose. We don't want to be that vulnerable with the world with those things. And sometimes I'm thrown into a role or a position where those things are going to actually help me enhance the story I'm telling. So an example might be, I played a role several years ago in the play Murder at the Vicarage, which is an Agatha Christie type story.
Cool.
And I played the nosy neighbor, and I am not a nosy neighbor. I played the nosy neighbor who thought they knew more than anybody else. And again, that's not really who I am. But what I discovered in that process is there are times, though, when I am the know-it-all, and people don't like that. So I discovered that as I was doing that role, playing the part of me that I don't like to be, the know-it-all, was to my benefit in portraying that role. And it was more believable for the audience in watching.
Wow, that is so awesome. And sometimes the I don't know if that's also what you call the dark side, but
yes,
but it can be really, it can actually make you really fun to watch, playing somebody you don't necessarily like, or playing a villain.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to play a villain at Femme Fatale, because it would help me to let off steam that I cannot in real life. I can let it out on stage.
Yes, yeah.
That is
so, and when I direct, it's very similar. So I'm in the process of casting the show Noises Off.
Oh yeah.
And there are, some crazy characters in that show, and we get to see both sides. We get to see the stage persona of the characters, but we also get to see their real life characters. And the way I am seeing this show is that the characters they are on stage are really more the cleaned up version of them that the world doesn't really get to see. And the backstage scenes, we get to see the opposite side of them. So we're playing both sides of ourselves in that show. So it should be quite fun to watch, I would think, because it will add to the energy. So there's a certain energy on stage, and then there's the energy off stage as well.
That's really incredible. And I bet that you try to get your cast into this kind of a vibe you'll need to bring on the show. Bring on a great show.
Yeah.
Any particular favorites you've directed or acted in? Or do you find yourself... Well, actually, I'll hold on to that question, but you sometimes miss acting, or do you find you a better director? But anyway, first question.
That's a great question. So to be honest with you, I think I enjoy acting more, but I find myself directing more, because I think there are people in this world that need somebody to help give them a voice. And so as a director, I can help people find a voice. So interesting correlation with directing shows and the work I do as a coach is sometimes the person that crosses my stage in auditions that I end up casting is perhaps someone that hasn't done a lot of acting for a long time. Meaning they might have done it when they were younger, and now they're adults and they're looking for something fun and creative to do. And so they're going to try this acting thing. And after they work with me in 1 or 2 or 3 shows, they realize that what they're doing on stage is opening a door to the fact that other aspects of their life they haven't been enjoying.
Oh.
Whether it's living here or being in a particular relationship or doing a job, quote unquote, a job that they've been doing that's not bringing them any joy. And so this joy that they're discovering on stage opens the door to begin to ask the question, do I like what I'm doing? Do I love what I'm doing? And if I don't, what would I rather be doing? And I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, I've had people that have worked with me during 1, 2, 3, or so on shows, where by the second or third show, they look at me and go, you know what? By doing this, it's opened this door for me to realize that I'm not happy in my job and I'm looking for something else to do. Mm-hmm. Or I had two recent actors work with me say, I really want to do this as my work. How can I do more of that? So that led to me coaching them in acting and preparing them to go. And I referred them to a manager that I know so that they could make that journey. And then I've had a couple of actresses who realized that living here in the Pacific Northwest was not bringing them joy. And they found the guts after being in a show to actually express that to their partners and their families. And then what ended up happening for both of them was they made the decision to move as a family. So one family moved to California, another family moved to Maine. So it was like, this was an opportunity. So the Creative Connection, the podcast, The Creative Connection, is about how this creativity can actually connect you to the real you and help you move towards what it is that I like to say is the reason why you're alive now in this time.
Well, I can tell you one thing. We had just celebrated the new Lunar New Year, the year of the fire horse.
Fire horse, yep.
And I, for one, have got this incredible energy of galloping forward.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's been giddy up, bitches. Here I come.
Yeah. It's also a time where, last year was the year of the snake.
Yes.
There was a lot of shedding of skin. There was a lot of shedding of things.
Oh, yeah.
And now that we've shed that skin and we have our new skin, it's like, okay, let's go. Where am I going?
Right,
where's the direction I need to be going? And there are some people that have no idea what to do with that energy.
Isn't that funny how that works with the Lunar New Year?
Yeah.
Now, can you tell me how you got into this coaching business? You mentioned that I believe that a while ago you had some sort of a corporate job.
Yeah, so the work I've been doing, I've done for a lot of years in a lot of different ways. So right out of college, my husband went to grad school in Southern Illinois, and I was hired by a local retailer. It's only local. There were 10 stores in 4 states. Mm-hmm. And I worked in the A store. And during my time there, I went, okay, how can I make this bigger and better? And that was the first time that I saw myself working with people to help develop them to create what they wanted to create in their job. And to take that company from the particular location I had was the lowest in the company, take it to the top. And I created my own training programs.
Wow. Which
the corporate office went, can you repeat that 10 times in all of our stores? So I did do that. So that work right there is what my business is now, but it's evolved over time.
Incredible.
And we all remember January of 2020 that led on to March of 2020, and we kind of shuttered our doors and
Yeah.
things changed, right? Well, in January of 2020, I was working for a cruise line. And January 13th, I remember the day, I actually remember the time, and I remember everything about that day and time. So January 13th, it was 7:30 in the morning, Pacific Northwest time, and my phone rang. I had just turned my phone on, and my phone rang, and it was one of my clients that I had booked on an extended vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And that client said, "Hey, Cyndi, what's going on?" I said, "What do you mean, what's going on?" And they said to me, "Well, we were supposed to dock, and nobody will let us dock."
Eh?
"Why won't they let us dock?" And I said, "I have no idea. I couldn't call him because he was calling from ship to shore. I said, "Can we arrange a time in like an hour or so I can do some digging and figure out what's going on?" And so we agreed. We hung up, and I called the supervisor, and I said, "Hey, what's going on? I have a client that called me from a ship. They can't dock." And the supervisor went, "You're not supposed to know this." Well, apparently it was an Asian sailing. Apparently things were already shutting down in Asia and Southeast Asia and some of the other islands, all from Japan and so on, were already shutting down, and the ship was denied the ability to dock.
Dear me.
And I thought, oh, this is weird. Well, later that day, remember I told you this husband and wife that have been mentors of mine over the years? Well, later that afternoon, the woman in this couple showed up on my Facebook feed, and I went, oh, this is weird. Because what she was talking about was being honest and authentic and visible, even if the truth hurts. And I thought, this is bothering me, that my work won't tell me what's happening, won't tell the clients what's happening. And so I have this big, on my values, truth and honesty is very high.
Yes, of
on
course.
My values.
Of course.
And so we did not tell the people on this ship that's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, we didn't tell them anything for 2 more weeks.
2 more weeks.
2 more weeks, but they still didn't have a place to dock.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
They didn't have a place to dock for yet another week. So during this time frame, I had other clients calling me saying, what's happening? Is my cruise going to go? Is my cruise not going to go? I heard that there's some problems with, traveling in the Pacific Ocean. What's going on? And we were told not to say anything.
Wow.
So that bothers me with that value of having honesty and integrity. And I'm also really loyal. So honesty, integrity, and loyalty are all at the top of my spectrum of values.
That must have been quite a burden on you at that time.
It was.
6 years ago.
So about February 20th, we were told that there was this virus floating around, and they were unclear about whether it was people on the ships that were bringing it or if it was already there, and that's why. And my client again called me from the ship and said, at this point in time, I don't really care where we dock, but I want to dock somewhere and I want to fly home. It was an older gentleman and his wife. And I went, well, I think they're working on getting you to Vietnam. So I don't know if you remember back in the day, but there was a ship that was allowed to dock in a very small community in Vietnam that they were able to get off, but then they were quarantined there for another week before they could fly home.
I think it may hurt.
And and then it was yet another 2 weeks, and I had this client saying, okay, are we going to be able to do this Tahiti cruise? And I said, I have no idea, because again, they're not telling us anything. And they made the decision, this client that called me, I'm not going to go cancel my cruise. If I'm out money, I'm out money. 2 hours later, they canceled the cruise.
Yeesh.
And so during this whole time, January, February, March, when everything shut down, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to keep this job anymore. I've got to find something else. And so during that process, I was going, what else can I do? Well, I've always wanted to help people find their path. Find the path of their career, find the path of something that brings them joy, find the path. So what do I want to do? So it was about another year later, I created my business. And I want to call it Creating a Passionate Life, because really what I am really inspired by and want to do is help people create the life that they are passionate about living. So it's coaching, it's meditation, it's working with performing artists, it's working with visionaries. So maybe somebody who's been working in a career that they feel like they're not being used to their fullest, and they're not experiencing joy anymore in what they've done. Or people that are finding themselves in transition. Maybe they've lost their job. Maybe they've lost something near and dear to them, a partner. Or I had a client, one of my first clients actually, when I officially created my business, was a woman who was retirement age, but she was afraid to retire. She was afraid to retire because she wasn't sure what would bring her joy anymore. Would she still have social connections? She loved to travel. She wasn't married. Would she ever find somebody that could be her travel partner? So we spent quite a bit of time working through those things. And about a year after we stopped working together, she called me and she said, "Can I take you out to lunch?" I said, "Sure, let's go to lunch, but you don't need to pay. We can go Dutch." And what she wanted to do was tell me that she had picked her retirement date. She had found a travel partner.
Yay.
She knew what she wanted to do with her life, and she was ready to move forward.
Hooray. As you helped her believe in herself.
Yeah. Well, not just that. Actually find her joy. Finding what makes us light up and be happy. We're not taught. And unless we're really good at learning that by watching, some people don't know. They really don't know.
That joy is not a reward, but a compass.
Yeah.
Which is actually one of my guiding beliefs that I repeat to myself every day.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, is they think that they have to be joyful all the time. The funny thing is, it's like Jacques' line in As You Like It, all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players, each knowing their own entrance and exit. And you must have sorrow with joy. It's not 100% joyful all the time. And it's learning that in the sorrow, there can be joy. We lose a pet. We lose a person we love. That's sad, but the joy is that we had them with us during the time that we did, and the memories we have can continue to bring us joy. So I do a lot of grief work too, because there's grief of loss of beings, but there's also grief related to losing a job, not finding the career that we thought we loved and not loving it. There's also, your body changes as you get older and health issues happen, and there's grief involved in that. It's learning how to handle the things that bring us down and find the things that lift us up in it. It's like a yin and a yang.
Yeah.
Joy and sorrow go together.
You can't have love without the pain.
Right.
What a wonderful way to put it. Have you ever applied those beliefs to your husband and your kids too? Your boys?
100%. So Dan and I, my husband and I, we do couples work. around the idea of presence. And, if you think about presence, if we're both present in this conversation, we can hear each other. We can also have a difficult conversation. So as a couple, there are difficult conversations sometimes. And to remain present during those difficult conversations. So Dan is presently working on a book called The Joy of Conflict.
Oh.
So in our conflict, there can be joy in that maybe the conflict is, well, I'll use one of ours. So Dan is a musician. He's a drummer. And early on in our marriage, he had decided to give up his drums because we were going to move. And he thought, well, I can replace those a lot easier than we can replace Cyndi's piano. So he gave up his drums, but then we finished our moving around and we were settled back in Washington. And I knew he was missing his drums.
Oh.
He was missing that connection to rhythm and playing. And I was teaching water fitness at the time. And one of the students in my class said, does anybody know a drummer? We need a drummer for an upcoming concert that we're doing. And I said, I do. I live with one. And that began actually my husband's journey with playing for the last 22 years with the Muckleteel Orchestra.
Wow, it's incredible.
Which is now expanded to the Everett Philharmonic, and he plays in the pit for most of my musicals.
Holy cow.
But early on, that was a conflict because he desired to do it, but he never shared it with me. Because he thought, if I share that with her, then she has to give something up, because we had 3 young kids at the time. And so it was a give and take. But what a lot of couples don't realize is that give and that take are important to developing a deeper relationship.
Yeah.
And if we can't be present and actually have the conversation and ask the questions, there will always be this divide.
Mm-hmm.
And neither person will be truly happy.
And a bit of resentment, not to mention.
Right. But that's a choice. Resentment is a choice, in my opinion. Well, so you can choose to have a conversation with someone and share something, and they say, well, blah, blah, blah. Well, you have a choice to make. Mm-hmm. You can either be angry or upset or resentful, or you can sit there and listen and go, I understand what you're saying. How can we work through this? And in that's where the joy of conflict comes.
That's a very interesting concept, the joy of conflict.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of sacrifice, where do you stand on that? And I know you've made plenty of sacrifices, but where do you stand on that? Is it a kind of a, how do I put this? Do you have to give up some things to support Dan, or did Dan have to sacrifice? No?
Early on, yes, because we assumed that's what we had to do.
I mean,
and that's an assumption everybody makes, is you have to sacrifice. No, I think there's a way for us to have our cake and eat it too.
How do you mean?
And without conversation, you'll never know.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was, our middle son, who is now 29, our middle son was about a year old. I wanted to go back to acting.
Oh, yeah, please.
And Dan said, okay, without even thinking about it. He knew he was going to have to take care of 2 kids now. So our 2.5-year-old and our 1-year-old. He was going to have to take care of both of them. Mm-hmm. And it was going to be for an extended period of time while I went to rehearsals. And it was going to mean he would have to shift his work. And so in hindsight, I asked him several years ago, did you consider that sacrifice? And he said, no. That was my pleasure to do that because it allowed you to do something that you needed to do.
Aww.
What it did was that he shifted priorities. He shifted how he did things so he could still do all the things he did, and so I could do the things I do.
What a wonderful husband he makes.
Yeah.
I am so happy you found someone like him who is willing to say, okay, I will stay home with the kids. You go on to rehearsals, baby, because you love it. Yeah, I always thought of the word sacrifice because it comes from, something like sacred. Yeah. That's the sacrifice or whatever. But then I think the one thing that's missing and that has, as I said, have created, leads to a lot of resentment, depending on how you choose, because they don't talk about it.
Right.
They don't talk about how can we work with this.
And a lot of people think of sacrifice as being negative. It's like, I have to give this up for you, rather than going, how can I figure out things so that you can be you and I can be me?
So it could be a positive
and we can be we. Yeah.
More of a compromise.
More of a compromise. And it's, do we really lose a part of ourselves in this compromise? So that's another thing. Sometimes people think, oh, if I have to compromise, that means I have to give something up, or I have to lose a part of something I want. And I see it more as a partnership in figuring out how we can be ourselves and a couple at the same time. Yeah.
And kind of more of an opportunity instead of being a terrible decision to make.
Yes, exactly.
I would love to see more couples just approaching sacrifice and compromises as a positive thing instead of a negative thing. Yeah.
Well, and I think the work that we do together, he and I do together, and what he does independently, I think that's a lot of what we do, is help people redefine some of these words that have either a negative history in their own families, or a belief that it has to be negative.
Yeah, reframing your core belief around this and that.
Yes.
God, love it. Love just what you're bringing to the podcast today.
Yeah. What else, Cyndi?
Let's see. Have you ever done any of this kind of work with either of your sons?
So all three of the sons we've done some presence work with, because we want them to go out into the world and be solid people that other people depend on. We've also given each of the boys the ability to lean into what they find that brings them joy. So our youngest, I'll use him as an example. So he just turned 27 yesterday.
Happy birthday.
And he had a fabulous job right out of college. He graduated from WSU with mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
Got a great job. He worked for 3 years for a company. And then last March, right about this time, he was starting to not enjoy it anymore.
No?
It was too much travel, too many days away from home. Oh. He didn't have opportunity to do some of the things that he truly enjoyed, like hang out with his friends or whatnot. And so, as it turns out, he suffered an injury. He does what's called HEMA, Historical Medieval European Martial Arts.
Ooh, nice.
And he fell and tore his Achilles tendon.
Ouch.
So he was going to have to take time off and have surgery and recover. And during that process, he and I would have conversations about, this is just not bringing me joy anymore, Mom. And, I'm not sure I really want to be an engineer. And I said, well, you've always enjoyed how things work, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be an engineer. Or maybe you are a different kind. So we would have conversations about how he could look at the things and the talents and the skills that he has.
Mm-hmm.
And he decided about a month and a half later that he was going to talk to his boss, that he was not enjoying things so much anymore. And he ended up leaving his job. Well, as it turns out, he had lots of money in the bank. He was a squirrel, so he saved money. And, we asked him, well, how long can you go without a job? And he said, well, I think I could probably go about 7 or 8 months without a job, which gave him time to explore, to play, to think, to figure it out, right?
To reassess.
Well, yes. About 3 years ago, about the time he got this job, my husband and him bought a sailboat. He loves the sailboat. And our sailboat needed work, so he would spend time working on it. Well, he recently got a job working as a boat repair person.
Wow.
It's just a part-time job, but it gives him the opportunity to play around and see if that's the kind of engineering he wants to do, or if he wants to do something else. But that's an example of not feeling like you have to be boxed in and make a choice. Our middle son, he tried college right out of high school. He didn't like it. That's not what he likes to do. He likes to hike. He likes to do things outdoors. He likes to create programs and have people participate in programs. He likes to educate people. And so for the longest time, he worked for the YMCA system, various different Ys. He was the aquatics director, whatnot.
Cool.
And recently, he was hired here in Mukilteo as one of the recreation program people. And he's like, Mom, I think I finally figured out what I want to go to school for. Now, mind you, he's 29. I want to go to school for environmental sustainability. But he had to do some exploring before he figured that out, right?
Right.
So, yes. So we have used it with the boys.
Man, I wish more moms were like you. because a kid, son or daughter, really needs a parent who would, okay, what is it that you really enjoy doing? Do you have any skills that you want to work with, etc.? Any interests?
I don't think it has to be a parent, to be honest with you. So if I go back to my piano teacher, that's what I learned from my piano teacher. From age 10 to 18 was this, I'd come into a lesson and she'd ask me how my day was or how things were going. And I would talk about my life. And she would ask me questions. She'd never answer the questions. She would only ask me questions, which allowed me to take that away and do exactly what we're talking about here. Figure out what I enjoyed and where I wanted to go and what was the path I wanted to do.
What is the one thing or two that truly makes you happy, fulfilled, even free to be yourself?
Exactly. In fact, I ask that question a lot of people. What is the thing that really brings you joy, that you love? And if you're not doing it, why not? What would you have to shift to create that?
Boom. And that is definitely what we're going to leave for the listeners today. Find something.
Yeah.
Right? Find something that makes you truly happy, fulfilled, liberated even.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Cyndi, for coming on to the podcast today.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry it took, juggling days and times and whatnot to figure it out. This is a busy time of year for me. So I'm glad we were able to figure it out.
That is, yeah, I'm finally glad that our stars have finally aligned. Can you tell the listeners here where to follow you on social media.
Sure. So I'm on Facebook, either with my name or my business, Creating a Passionate Life, or I'm also on Instagram, again, Mama Cyndi or Coach Cyndi, or my webpage is my name. So it's HTTPS and then all of the hashes, my name, CYNDITHOMSEN.net. And that will line you up to everything. Or on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn as well.
And your podcast link. Where can they find your podcast?
I'm on YouTube, and it's the YouTube, my name, and then podcasts, or you can just look up the Creative Connection podcast.
And I'll be sure to include it in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Fabulous.
All right. And I also want to leave to the listeners, I hear you and I see you. Or rather, we hear you and we see you. Love you guys. Mwah.